Hello everyone, welcome to the live Q&A with me, Professor Michael Scott. It is the 3rd of February, so the 3rd of the 2nd, 22. Not quite as good a date as yesterday, 2/2/22, nor quite as good as the date that will be coming up in the near future of the 22nd of February 22. So it will be 22/2/22, which kind of is a celebrated day because it's going to be not only the birthday of the Lytham St Anne's Classical Association chair, Christina Kelly, but also a day in which she is going to be undertaking a mammoth set of tasks, kind of running, of press-ups and cycling, all in aid, massive numbers of these things all during the course of the day, in aid of great charity. So if you're interested, do go and have a look at the Lytham St Anne's Classical Association page, where I believe there is more info, or you can have a look at my Twitter feed at ProfMCScott, and you can find out a little bit more about what will be happening on the 22nd of the 2nd, 22. And it will put us all to shame. As you can see, I'm in my sporty gear this afternoon, having tried, at least in vain, to have done a little bit of something during the course of the day to make me feel even half or quarter or an eighth or 16th or a 32nd or whatever it might be of what everyone else, and particularly Christina, is doing. So good afternoon, everyone, and welcome on the 3rd of February. And it has been a joy looking at some of your responses to the great question that came up from Christina Gore when we last met, which we set out on the Facebook page asking for your responses to. And it was, in your opinion, which character is the most fascinating and diverse in reception across both Greek and Roman mythology? So this was the idea of which kind of mythological character has been looked at and perceived and represented in the most different number of ways across time and space, and kind of who has sort of, if you like, careered across the spectrum from being perhaps good to very evil, or being a sympathetic character to being one we can't really identify with at all. Hello everyone, hello, thank you so much indeed for tuning in. And we've had some great answers, and it seems to me that there are 3 clear winners that people have congregated around to offer up as having the most diverse and interesting reception stories. Now, 2 of these we might kind of think are quite kind of obvious, but one I think is particularly interesting and less well known, or at least less well realised, even though they are themselves a very well-known character. So, the first off, and this is kind of stretching the mythological to the historical, but I think she definitely deserves a space in our consideration, is Cleopatra. A number of you were writing in thinking about the reception that Cleopatra has had as a character, and how she has gone really across the entire spectrum, from devil-like temptress right the way through to perhaps her rehabilitation in more modern times, thinking about her as a very gifted and indeed extremely astute female ruler within a very male-dominated world, who did an extraordinary job of keeping Egypt at the forefront of what was going on until events finally overtook her. So Cleopatra gets a number of votes from people like Christina Gore, who was putting up Cleopatra, and also Ebba Freeman were kind of both vying for Cleopatra as their candidate. Then there was Medusa. Medusa came through as well, and I was a bit surprised by this for a second, but then absolutely the case. Hello, Elizabeth from Sweden. Thank you so much indeed for joining us. So a number of you came in on Medusa's side to say Medusa kind of always set up as the monster to Perseus's hero, and yet actually deserves a whole series of retellings, and is beginning to get them in the works of writers like Natalie Haynes and Charlotte Higgins, exploring Medusa as victim, where we can have actually empathy with her story and her unjust punishment. But, you know, kind of there's lots of voices against that. As Tracy has pointed out to us, there's lots of people who still kind of side on the idea that Medusa is, in fact, somebody to not to feel in any way sorry for. DF has also come back in on Medusa, saying she's been portrayed as a victim, seductress, or a monster across literature, film, art, and even as an apotreic, as an I can't say this word this afternoon. Apotropaic device. Indeed, absolutely. Medusa, a really interesting character for diverse reception across the board. And then finally, the one that I hadn't thought about really at all, Artemis or Diana in the Roman world, but the goddess Artemis. A number of you, including Christina herself, who asked this question, came in vying for Artemis, thinking that kind of, she has lots of dynamic and fascinatingly different kinds of cult worship in sanctuaries across the ancient world. Thank you, Linda, for sympathizing with my problems with saying the word apotropaic. There we go. Okay, I think I've got it now kind of back in. Thank you. So Christina kind of was thinking about Artemis and Diana, and Josh Alberton has also come in thinking about Artemis Diana and thinking about it in terms of her different worship across ancient cultures. So thinking about her in classical Greece as the huntress and goddess of wilderness, chastity, childbirth, while in Ephesus, and thinking thus more towards, as we're going towards the kind of Western Asia and Central Asia, thinking about her and with her Asiatic influence as the many-breasted goddess of animal fertility. And then, of course, kind of even later during Roman rule, as Josh points out, getting conflated with Hecate and Selene, the moon, as a kind of lunar deity. So there's lots of kind of wide variation in Artemis in terms of actual her worship and meaning and idea. Samantha says, that's nothing. I can never pronounce. Oh, now you're just putting up words for me to pronounce and have difficulties with, aren't you, Samantha? Thank you so much for that. Plutocracy or plutocracy. Oh, right. We're moving on. So Artemis, another key winner, I think, from our group indeed. So thank you so much, Christina, for your great question and for helping us understand and think a little bit more about the reception of mythological, divine, and in some cases, historic characters. So thank you for that. Now, it is also Prize Week. And we've been looking back through the questions that you have been asking and we have had the chance to answer over the past couple of weeks. And we pick a winner, and that winner gets a prize. Now, I have already seen that the winner of this prize is live online with us today to respond to their win. So all of you online, of those who have asked questions and had them answered over the last couple of weeks, drum rolls for the winner. And the winner this time is Elizabeth Henriksen, who asked the fantastic question about the horrible gesture with the middle finger that is related to what a pupil of Socrates did. And this led us in to a whole series of great questions about the origins of the giving the finger and seeing its ancient origins, how this pupil of Socrates was chastised for doing it, and then of course led us into a whole series of to act like people from certain parts of the world meant to do things in certain ways. And we learnt lots about the people of Sifnos. So Elizabeth, now you really are all offering. So Lee, thank you very much. No, I am not going to try and say that one. Colin, thank you for saying epistemology. So there we go. Okay, we're getting them. Thank you for bringing out all of the great words. Supercalifragilisticexpialidocious, and kind of we're all getting there indeed. So Elizabeth, thank you so much indeed. Mark, greetings from Las Vegas. Thank you much indeed for tuning in. Tracy, no, let's not bring the Welsh into it, or indeed the name of any Icelandic volcanoes. Let's leave that all to one side, please. So Elizabeth, you are the winner, and that means you get a copy of the Prof Michael Scott 2022 calendar. So if you can get in touch with us via the Facebook page or via email to michaelscottacademic@gmail.com, and we give us an address to post that out to you, we will post that out to you post haste, and you can also let us know any dedication that you would like written in the calendar. Then kind of that would be fabulous. Thank you all for your fantastic questions, because they really do make this a kind of a live and fun kind of piece of interaction and time. And I learned so much, as I hope to all of you. Helen, yes, Mary Beard's Forbidden Art on BBC Two tonight at 9 o'clock. Yes, we will be well done and dusted and able to sit down in front of the television for Mary's programme this evening. We're looking forward to it. So that's all great news. Well done on the prize. Now, we have talked about Christina's question. We have done the prize. I need to flag something for you guys coming up in 2 weeks' time. Lee's got a serious question now, have you? Have you been hanging around any car parks recently in visible cities? Well, you know how much I like a good car park. I've talked about car parks and the extents of ancient Roman walls of London that you can see in the London Roman Wall car park of the City of London, NCP, spaces 52, 53. And yes, I have been through my fair share of Athenian underground car parks as well to find bits of the ancient walls of Athens. It is an absolute joy to see the modern and the ancient world brought together. Linda says, I bet Mary's programme will be trade cheeky. Yes, I don't think you're going to find Mary in an underground car park in her Forbidden Art programme this evening in any way, shape or form. But in talking about invisible cities and talking about the amazing laser scanning work that we did for those programmes, if you are able to get to London on the, hang on, let me get the date right so that I make sure I'm not kind of sending you guys astray, on Friday, the 18th of February. So this is the Friday just leading into half term for those with little ones. But on the Friday, the 18th of February at the Science Museum in London, Kensington, which has a great exhibition on at the moment about ancient Greek science and philosophy and wisdom and discovery. We are going to be having a live event called When Worlds Collide, How Modern Technology Reveals the Ancient Past. So I'm going to be there talking a little bit about the laser scanning and showing some of my favourite clips from the Invisible Cities films and the sorts of things that we're trying to achieve by using this kind of technology. Alice Roberts will be talking about her latest book and about what the wonders of science can bring to the understanding of bones. And there will also be joining live through live stream some of the creators of Assassin's Creed Odyssey to talk about the gaming, the increasingly important gaming world and what that can bring to understanding of the ancients. Tracy, don't suppose it will be live streamed or recorded. I fear that it is not going to be. It's going to be a live event for those in person because there's lots of different stuff coming in from different places already. So I'm sorry to say, I think you've got to be there in person to be able to take part. Marta, you're from Malta. So again, Mark from Las Vegas, this might all be a bit too much for you to be able to make. But if you are anywhere near London on the 18th of February, then do come along and join us. And the kind of films are going to be shown and the clips are going to be shown in kind of IMAX quality cinema. So there'll be lots of good bangs and crashes and with, you know, all good Dolby surround sound, etc. So it should be great fun. And there'll be a chance also to meet after the event. And there'll be a book signing and things like that. So it would be really, really good to see you there if you can make it. So thank you, Lee, for your question. Serious question. Samantha, you're asking for a time. Absolutely. Thank you. Where would I be without you guys? We are kicking off, I believe, at about 7 o'clock. So starting at about 7, if we will post the link to the event, if it's not already posted, I'm sure it is, up on the Facebook page, so that you can, you have to buy your tickets or kind of at least go apply for the tickets in advance. So do go through the link and hopefully and get your tickets, and then you get all the details. Claire, as ever, brilliantly has put the details right there in the link there in the chat for you to be able to go and have a look at it and see if you can get your tickets right now while we're speaking. But obviously, please do stay to listen to the rest of the Q&A first before we head off. You head off to do that. Now, little secret announcement to let you all in on. Tracy's going to be in Cornwall. We'll let you off this one, Tracy. Okay. A little secret to let you all in on. That in 2 weeks' time, we will be doing the next Q&A. So the next date for the Q&A is 5 p.m. on the 17th of February, which is also famous for my brother's birthday. And on that day, we will be joined by Liam Jensen from Australia. From Sydney, Australia, because he is, as many of you may know, the Lego classicist. Who is responsible for creating the Lego figures of classicists around the world and for hosting and mentoring and looking after the Lego classicist family. Now, Liam, a couple of years ago, started the International Lego Classicisms Day, which takes place on the 20th of February every year and has done for the last couple of years. So I encourage you all, come the 20th of February, to get involved in the International Lego Classicisms Day. And anything you've got in the vein of Lego that is kind of related to the ancient world. We are, for instance, here in this household currently building the Lego Colosseum. We have the base, and now we are about to build up the great walls of the Lego Colosseum. I feel just as cool and as good as I'm sure the Roman Emperor himself did when he commissioned it and went and kind of then spent the 100 days of games that were instituted after the opening. Now, I don't know if we're quite going to be able to do 100 days of games after we've completed the Lego model, but we'll certainly have a bit of a bash. So anything you can do with Lego, do get online through Twitter, Instagram, wherever you are on, or through Facebook as well, on and perhaps in the Classics community group, perhaps in the Professor Michael Scott Classics community group, you guys can have a celebration around the time of the 20th. International Lego Classicisms Day, Lego and Classics, bringing these two worlds together. And you can do this through all sorts of ways. You can show your favourite Lego figures. You can build something classical out of Lego. My love of Lego and classics began many, many years ago when I built a model of Delphi, the site I worked on for my PhD, out of Lego along with some friends, and then took it to a research seminar and proudly held it out as kind of part of my research. Samantha says, how will I stage the sea battles in my Lego Colosseum? Well, Lego is, of course, weather resistant to everything, so I don't see why we can't fill it with water and see what happens. And then long term, people have already started asking me, what am I going to do with this Lego Colosseum? Am I going to have it on display long term in the house, or am I going to do something with it afterwards? And I've been encouraged to think about potentially moving it outside to the garden, where someone has brilliantly suggested we could actually fill the Colosseum with earth and use it as a very ornamental flower pot. It's a big flower pot, so we could get a tree in there, I think, a small tree, instead of just a few flowers. But I think you'll agree that potentially the Lego Colosseum as permanent outdoor flower pot has a nice ring to it. So International Lego Classicisms Day, build a model of a caryatid, build a Greek column, build an entire temple, whatever takes your fancy. Tweet a picture of it or put it on Facebook, put it on the Classics community page. As long as you use the hashtag ILCD 2022. ILCD, International Lego Classicisms Day 2022. Now, Liam will be joining us next time on the 17th of February. Now, that will mean very early o'clock I think, in Australian hours, so it's very good of him to join us. But he's joining us especially because he's bringing some Lego questions of his own to the Q&A next time, and we are going to have an entirely Lego-themed Q&A on the 17th of February in advance of the Sunday the 20th of February and Lego Classicisms Day. So, for next time, when you are sending in your questions, please, please, please think about Lego-themed questions. So, Lego and classics themed questions, whatever you might kind of bring to bear. Lego, think Lego as you're sending in your questions. Now, I'm always a big supporter and a fan of International Lego Classicisms Day, as is Warwick Classics, and Warwick Classics Network has often done a few things for International Lego Classicisms Day, and we are very fortunate at Warwick for a number of the staff of the department to be Lego classicists. Myself, for instance, as well as Zara Newby, as well as kind of a number of other members of the department. So we are Lego classicists. We are supporting International Lego Classicisms Day, as we hope you are too. And there's a secret to let you in on. That Liam is coming specially to join the Q&A on 17th of February, because every year there is an International Lego Classicist of the Year. And, well, I can't possibly reveal who it might be, but perhaps we can do it on the 17th of February. So do join in the Q&A on the 17th of February and come and celebrate all things Lego. Come and get ready for the International Lego Classicisms Day 2022, and perhaps we can have a bit of a giggle with the reveal of who is the International Lego Classicist of the Year 2022 as well. Colin's asking, was there a big Lego model in the Acropolis Museum in Athens? I think there was at one point. I think you're absolutely right. And it it's not the first. The Colosseum is not the first piece of the ancient world to have been offered as an official Lego set. I believe the Parthenon kind of was actually a kit you could buy. I just saw recently that you could also buy the Titanic to make up in Lego as well, but that doesn't seem to be quite as satisfying or as inspiring in many ways as the Colosseum. Alexis, you think you know what's coming? Do you? Well, do you? Do you? Well, that's a good question indeed. I leave you there on the edges of your seats. Now, we must get on to some questions, to actually answer some questions today. So, Ricardo Bardeles Villacorta, coming to us from Peru, asked this question. Is there a relationship between the Greek god Dionysus and the Hindu god Shiva? Absolutely brilliant question, Ricardo, and I hope that you are with us and you hear that we are answering your question coming live from Peru. So yes, this is actually a really interesting kind of whole set of overlaps between these different cultures. Now, from about the 4th century BCE, obviously with the conquest of Alexander the Great, taking the Greek world right to the shores of the River Indus and the borders with India, there was increasingly consistent and continual contact between the Greek world and that of India. And what we get out of that is the reports by the end of the 4th century from my favourite character, Megasthenes, who was the official Greek ambassador sent from the Seleucid court to the court of King Chandragupta Maurya in India at Pataliputra. He reports all these stories about the ways in which Heracles, was said by the Indians to have been born in India and to actually have been responsible for building a number of the great cities of the Mauryan Empire, including the capital Pataliputra. But he also talks about the way that the Indians say that Dionysus was born in and travelled through and rested in India and brought the grape to India as well. But a number of scholars have looked at kind of the different divinities of these different cultures and seen overlaps and similarities. So, Ricardo, yes, Dionysus and Shiva kind of very regularly compared because there are lots of overlaps in the sorts of ways in which they're worshipped and they're portrayed as gods. So think about both of them have a interaction with wine, with the concept of ecstasy, with animals like snakes. Both have nocturnal rites. Both have kind of associations of sort of frenzied women as part of their worship. Both have associations with fertility. And in fact, in the Greek sources, when they're talking about Shiva, they will often talk about the Indian Dionysus. So there's lots of overlap here, although it's interesting to note that the Indians won't necessarily in the way that they talk about the gods, overlap Dionysus and Shiva quite so much. And in fact, they keep the two distinct. So perhaps more a desire for overlap from the Greek side than from the Indian side. But there is a great article that kind of written back in 1990 by Wendy O'Flaherty on this particular issue of Dionysus and Shiva as an overlap. We can supply that to anyone who would be interested to know more. But it's Dionysus and Shiva aren't the only two, because actually, in fact, we see lots of overlap with a number of different Greek heroes and gods, or indeed not so much overlap, but perhaps the influence of these particular divinities, particularly on the artistic representation of Indian divinities as well, or at least the development and coalescence of ways of representing them thanks to their similarities and attributes and stories that are told about them. So Heracles, for instance, there tends to be, as we get into the Hellenistic period through down to the last centuries BC and the early centuries CE, increasing overlap between the way that Heracles is portrayed with Vajrapani, the kind of Indian figure who is one of the companions of the Buddha. So, for instance, Vajrapani has this same kind of bearded look and with the lion skin tied around the shoulders as Heracles does. And there's this increasing overlap and coalescence between the two. Now, scholars have tried to trace, in particular, how far this influence of the visual portrayal of Heracles actually extends, with some arguing that it extends all the way into China, although that's a little bit more iffy. But it opens up this incredible world for us of interaction, coalescence, acculturation, as these different cultures understood more about one another and more about the similarities in some cases and differences in some cases between themselves, and began to exchange and actually interact, thus generating a kind of common language in ways to talk about the gods, a common artistic language going forward. So Alexis, is there any similarities with the ancients in the other direction globally, i.e. to the Americas? Not, well, there is a comparative strand of analysis which talks about the sort of natural way in which the human brain and the human psychology is predisposed to create gods that are relevant and related to particular things. So lots of different cultures, for instance, create gods that are responsible for earthquakes because you need a kind of explanation for these great natural phenomena that is kind of very easily attributable to the divine. So you can do that kind of comparative analysis and see where different cultures, many different cultures, have come up with gods that respond to and deal with the similar functions. But in terms of actually connective analysis, I don't think we're going to find anything going between the ancient Mediterranean and the Americas for now, at least. But who knows what might happen in the future. So Ricardo, thank you so much for your absolutely fantastic question. Debbie Clifton's, having heard the talk on Delos that I did for the Lytham St Anne's Classical Association, so glad you were able to listen to it, Debbie. She is interested to know whether the Anthony Gormley statues are still there. This is a really great question. So back in 2019, Anthony Gormley was invited to do an exhibition across the island of Delos and to, in some ways, repopulate the island of Delos, because one of the most fabulous things about it is that there are very, very, very few people living on the island today, only those responsible for the upkeep of and maintenance of the archaeological site itself. Other than that, it is not an island that is lived on, or indeed possible normally to stay overnight on. So the census, whereas in the ancient world, in the 1st century BCE, the population was something like 24,000 people on this tiny island that was a commercial and religious centre for the entire Mediterranean. Today, it is something more like 11. So Debbie's asking about the Anthony Gormley exhibition, which was in some ways supposed to repopulate the island with figures of peoples that, and he placed them in the sea, just off the coast of Delos and across the island. There was quite a bit of mixed reaction at the time to some of these figures and to the style of Anthony Gormley's sculpture, as to whether or not it was respectful and fitted in with the classical ruins and kind of detracted or added to the understanding of the ancient site itself. Tracy thinks that they were a bit weird, as did many people. Others liked them a lot. But no, Debbie, they are not still there. It was an exhibition in 2019, so pre-COVID, if we can all remember back to those days. And so they have now gone again. But you can see some great images of all of those different sculptures around as well, kind of online, particularly by the different groups that sponsored the exhibition. Fiona Astley has also asked this question about having watched the BBC two-parter on Sicily that I did, that she's just booked her trip there. She's going in a couple of months. Lucky you, Fiona. Can we recommend local highlights? Well, there are the things that are in the programme. Absolutely, definitely for you to see Agrigento with the temples, obviously Selinus, kind of, and Selinunte as it is, and Segesta. If you can, when you're at Segesta and Selinus, go to the marble quarry site that is nearby, where you can actually see an ancient marble quarry where they were obviously in the process of carving out great marble column drums when they had to abandon the site quickly and run away. And there are literally marble column drums broken out of the marble, brought out of the marble and ready for transportation, but they just never got round to transporting them away to the building site. So you can see these great sites and kind of like the marble quarry, and those are over kind of on the southern west coast of the island. Then when you're on the eastern coast of the island, obviously Taormina might be top of your list to go to the theatre, but also I would say go to Noto and Ragusa, as well as two fantastic cities, not of the ancient period, but we'll accept that there are some other good periods of history on Sicily and elsewhere. But Noto and Ragusa are beautiful places to spend a little bit of time. And then perhaps my favourite, which was in the programme back in Palermo on the northwestern coast. Palermo, it's Palermo Opera House, which is possibly one of my favourite buildings in the entire world, and is definitely worth going to get a ticket for something. You get tickets pretty cheap to be up there in the top seats, and it's definitely worth going to for a magical night of culture. So there we go, Fiona. A few thoughts from me. I'm sorry I haven't got to some of your other questions, but we will come back to them in future weeks on the 17th of February alongside our Lego questions. Few things just to flag to you very quickly. The new Museum of Underwater Antiquities has been approved in Greece, so we're going to get a fantastic new Museum of Underwater Antiquities. But here in the UK, we are beginning to worry about how climate change may affect the surviving ancient material that is still buried in the ground, particularly in areas like Vindolanda, where the boggy peat of the natural area and its consistency has been brilliant at preserving otherwise perishable goods over the centuries. But with climate change and increasing temperatures, that peat may well be drying out and things won't survive in the same way, which would be a tragedy. And we see this all the way around the world, thinking also in an area that I'm working on at the moment for my current book, thinking out into the area of the Urals over in Russia, where things that have been frozen in ice for millennia and thus preserved beautifully, that ice is no longer staying frozen. And so lots of the underground tombs of nomadic tribes are being lost before they can be properly investigated. Now, finally, we have to finish with this. Arnold Schwarzenegger, is he playing Zeus or is he not? There was a fantastic discussion on the Classics community group over the last week or so, talking about the poster that was released by Schwarzenegger himself on Twitter, which I tweeted out, and everyone got excited and put on the Facebook page. But is he or is he not doing a film, or was it more likely a Super Bowl ad? Oh dear, he wouldn't say anything about the project, only that it's coming in February 2022. Is this a tease for a new Super Bowl ad during the big game on Sunday, the February the 13th? But by golly gosh, wouldn't Arnold Schwarzenegger be a fantastic Zeus figure? Yes, I think he would be. Right, everyone, our time is up. So come back next time, 17th of February, 5 p.m. UK time. We will be doing International Lego Classicisms Day in advance with some big announcements, and with the International Lego Classicist himself, Liam Jensen, joining us. So do get in your questions, and we look forward to seeing you all then. In the meantime, stay safe. Have a great couple of weeks. Look after yourselves. Stay safe, stay well, stay happy. I'll see you soon. Take care.